I think it would be the same among any Manchester United fan and among any football supporter. He was a hero. He was a world-class player. He was the original king of the Stretford End, and he's passed away after a great life. I just spoke to Brian Kidd, one of his teammates, about 20 minutes ago, and Brian said he was slight, Dennis, with the heart of a lion, an unbelievable finisher. He scored every type of goal. He said to me, if you're ever wide, don't look up, just put the cross in early. If I'm not there, it's my fault. He was usually there. So Matt loved him. We all did. He was the king of the Stretford End. And I thought they were lovely words from Brian. And United fans will just be very, very, very sad. There's not one statue of Denis Law at Old Trafford. There's two. One of them's in the Stretford End. One of them's alongside his former teammate George Best and Sir Bobby Charlton. All three of them were European Player of the Year. Can you imagine that? All three of them in the same team, in the same position. And they're all slightly different. They're all heroes. And Dennis didn't just serve Manchester United with distinction. He served Manchester City very well in two spells. He went to Torino, and it was very rare for British players to go abroad, and each time attracting record fees because he was that good. He was a world class striker, and Huddersfield Town as well. He had an edge to him. He could look after himself, Dennis, but he was renowned for his goals and the fact that he could score every type of goal. And very proud to be from Aberdeen, a real working class hero. There's another statue of him there as well. Sir Alex Ferguson would talk of him as being one of his heroes. But he settled in Manchester with his family. They were very, very well regarded, and he was quite a private person. And I interviewed him several times as a journalist, and he was always very interesting. I knew his daughter died much better, and my condolences go out to his family, to Diana and to Robert. Lovely people, really well respected people, and completely proud of their father, of the husband, as you would be. What a life he had, and it's very sad right now. But Dennis lived until 84. He played in some of the best teams, the first English team to win the European Cup. Not that he'd celebrate the Englishness of it, because he was a proud Scot, and scored goals wherever he went. Fans loved him, real hero of the Stretford End, and it's very, very sad. And the sentiments I'm seeing when I'm speaking to people and getting messages and looking at social media, they're exactly the same. He was a universally adored and respected football figure.
You can hear the warmth in your voice as you remember Denis Law. Andy, I know that you know all of the old Manchester United legends. You've spent time with them personally. He was a real character away from the game as well.
Oh, he was, yeah. You didn't forget it. I remember meeting him a week before Manchester United won the treble in 1999, and he had a book out, so he had to leave his house. He had to come and meet people like me. And once he'd moaned about it and moaned a little bit more, he started talking. What a career he had. Fans would sing Son of a Fisherman from Aberdeen. Played for his country at the age of 17. Football legend, it was clear to see. And people would still sing songs of Denis Law now. And Eric Cantona was called the king. And Cantona was a great player. But if you say that to fans of a certain generation, they'll just shake their heads and look at you dismissively and say there was only one king. And I do know the older players, and I speak to the older players. I wrote Paddy Crerand's autobiography with him. The stories about Dennis in that were enough for a book by themselves. And some of them involved his goals, obviously. Some of them involved his scraps, obviously. And those meetings against Leeds United in the 60s and 70s, fans smile because they were a great Leeds team as well. And Dennis could mix it. He could use his feet, he could use his elbows, but fundamentally, a really, really good person. And it comes after Sir Bobby Charlton, one of his teammates, passed away. George Best obviously passed away some time ago. And when I called Brian Kidd to tell him, because we did know the news by now before it became public, his words are much more relevant than mine. I'm too young really to remember seeing Denis Law play. I only knew him after he'd stopped playing. But what a life, and that should be celebrated, because it's very sad right now. But you're seeing this outpouring of tribute and respect for him because of his standing in world football. He was one of the best strikers in the world. Proud son of Aberdeen, and isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, a Ballon d'Or winner as well, Andy, and just seems an all out-and-out goal scorer. You look at the list of Manchester United goal scorers, and he's there third with only Sir Bobby Charlton and Wayne Rooney ahead of him. He's joint top of Scotland's goal scorers alongside Kenny Dalglish. It just seems like he had an incredible eye for goal and an ability to convert those chances.
Yeah, and he was spotted at 14 years old. And he was a real working class hero. He grew up in a tenement block in Aberdeen, and Huddersfield got him. And he went there and he absolutely impressed everybody and went in for a big fee from Huddersfield, first of all to Manchester City and then to Italy. Played for Scotland 55 times, scored 30 goals, and people just remember him as someone who won the lot. He played in that first English team to win the European Cup, and he left City because he said he wanted to play in a more successful team, and that's why he went to Torino. I think that was the summer of '61. 110,000. That was a record transfer fee for a British player at the time. And he had his scrapes in Italy, and it wasn't easy. The times were completely different then. There was no internet. Technology was totally different. He was involved in a car crash as well. Put a transfer request in, and then he came back to Manchester, but not to City, but United. But then he did get to City again, 73, 74, and there's that very famous footage of him scoring at Old Trafford as Manchester United were sent down. And people say that Denis Law sent United down. United were going down anyway because results had already decided that. But he didn't celebrate scoring against Manchester United. Filled him with sadness what Manchester United had become, because they gone from being the champions of Europe in '68 to a team that were relegated 6 years later. But he stayed in Manchester. His family stayed in Manchester. Diana, his daughter, worked for Manchester United for a long time. She was really good at her job. She assisted Alex Ferguson with the media, and she's very close with the class of '92. Absolutely wonderful girl, wonderful family, and he was a wonderful footballer.
Denis Law wasn't at Manchester United when the Munich air disaster happened in 1958, but he was one of the players that helped rebuild the club towards that European Cup win in '68. Signed for them 4 years later. And Manchester United are very good at remembering their history and their historical players. How do you think they'll mark the passing of Denis Law?
Suitably, Manchester United are really good at this, not just with players. Dennis's wife was at the funeral of Kath Phipps, the receptionist who served the club so well, only last week. United are good at this. United's ties with history are so strong, and it's a great attraction of the club, and it's a great appeal. It's a reason a lot of people support Manchester United, and that should never be severed. These people are legends. They should be looked after. And the club was very different, as you rightly say, when he moved back to Manchester. 1962 was only less than 4 years after the Munich air disaster. Crowds were down. The team hadn't won anything. But they did win the FA Cup in his first season because he was joined by Paddy Crerand. And when they weren't arguing with each other, him and Crerand, they were actually quite good footballers working together, and worked out they could be quite effective. So they won the FA Cup in '63, league champions in '65, in '67, and then 1968, United won at Wembley. They beat Benfica, and that was a decade after Munich. Dennis had some injuries. He missed out on some key games in his time, but just a wonderful, wonderful human. And even though he was so strongly tied to Manchester because he lived there, his ties with Aberdeen were never forgotten. He did a lot of charitable work, and I know Aberdeen fans who are completely in awe of Denis Law, even though he didn't play for them. And Huddersfield Town as well. He played there for 4 seasons, so he was at Huddersfield at the time of the Munich air disaster. But his goal scoring record, 68, 69, was not a good season for Manchester United at all. He scored 30 goals. When they won the league in 64, 65, 39 goals. The season before, 63, 64, 46 goals. And the records are just incredible. And if he would have stayed at one club, he'd be the club's record goal scorer. But 237 goals for Manchester United in 404 games. It's not a bad record, is it? Something to be very, very proud of.
Yeah, incredible numbers there. And Andy, I'm not sure if you have managed to see this yet, 'cause it was just before you joined us, but Liverpool have sent a reply on X to the statement that Manchester United released. They said, sending condolences from all of us at LFC. Dennis was a rival player, but so highly thought of. As Bill Shankly once said, Denis Law could dance on eggshells. Our thoughts are with Dennis's family and friends at this very sad time. And it seems because the character of the man, as you've been so warmly talking to us about, that he was popular universally, despite the fact that he would have caused so much pain to these rival fans because of how brilliant he was on the pitch.
Yeah, I've seen tweets from my own tweets, and one of them was from a big Liverpool fan, Nicky Holt, saying he would have been the king of the cop if Shankly would have got his hands on him. And Scotland produced amazing managers and amazing footballers of that time when you consider a relatively small population. And some of them, they were going to Liverpool, they were going to United. Crerand was going to Liverpool and he ended up at United. Macari was going to Liverpool and he ended up at United. But Liverpool had great teams as well. And they were fierce rivals, but they always used to speak to each other. Bill Shankly used to ring Denis Law and Pat Crerand on a Sunday to talk about the weekend's games. And this is obviously in the days of landline, and they might be generous with some of the misinformation they gave to a rival manager, but absolute respect. These people were kings of the game, and if you didn't like him because you're a rival fan, you knew you respected him. In the parlance of the modern youth, he was some baller.
So 237 goals for Manchester United, only Sir Bobby Charlton and Wayne Rooney ahead of him. 2 statues at Old Trafford. If you were to have some mythical league table of all-time legends, where would he sit? Surely right at the top, near the top.
Oh yeah, he's top 5, absolutely. I mean, he played in the team that won the European Cup. His goal-scoring record is there. The only Manchester United player with 2 statues, as we've said. So complete hero. Fans might argue among themselves whether Best was better or Charlton was better, or the modern day fans might have their argue. But what a nice argument to have. Undisputed world-class footballer, but as good as that, a really good person as well. Someone who scored very well on the grapevine in Manchester. And as I've said, he was private. He did like to be at home. He didn't like too much of a fuss to be made, but he also stayed in touch with a lot of his former teammates, and they talk about a loyal friend. He watched football. It was in his blood, wasn't it? He watched it all the time, and the tributes that are coming in, and I'm seeing some of them because this is very fresh news as well. They're absolutely fitting, and it's lovely that Liverpool are doing that. And Manchester City, they were served by him so well in 2 spells. So big figure in the world of football, and it's a great loss.
Yeah, Andy, you've mentioned as well the Holy Trinity, the United Trinity of Law, Best and Charlton, and now unfortunately they have all passed on. Do you think, as Chris was referring to earlier, that there might be something by the club to really respect the incredible achievements that the 3 of them made together as well?
Yeah, there already is, and it's lovely that they've been alive and seen this. There is a statue outside the most prominent side of Old Trafford called the Holy Trinity, and people go and see it and stand by it and have the photo taken by it before every single Manchester United game. And in that statue, you've got Bobby Charlton holding the football, George Best looking like the coolest man in the world, but the man in the middle is Denis Law, pointing up like he used to do when he scored the goals, smiling, and people would talk about the way he'd grab his cuff when he was celebrating, or even when he was playing, and that appealed to a lot of people. You speak to a lot of Manchester United fans, and Denis Law was their best ever player. They'd say things like, "Yeah, we know George was better looking, but Denis was the one who wanted you to get the goals." And they'd have these utterly pointless arguments that make the football world go round and round, but all coming from a place of real love and affection. And Manchester United, they do mark the heroes well. They remember the heroes well. They should never be forgotten, these heroes. The fans do it well. The club do it well. And you know, you could easily be saying to me, do you think there might be a statue of him? Well, there's already two. Can't say any better than that. What a man.